Hi, this is the fifth and final instalment in my series of video lessons on ukulele music theory. If you haven't yet watched the other 4 videos in this series, then it may be a good idea for you to go and do that first before you have a look at this one. So I'm going to start off by talking about the sort of chords that are used in the blues. Blues is a hybrid of traditional European harmony with melodic and rhythmic influences from Africa. It gives us permission to play 3 blue notes in addition to the usual notes of the major scale. All 3 of these blue notes are flattened by 1 semitone from notes in the major scale. Now in the key of C major, these are E flat, the minor third, there's the major third, E flat is the minor third, and then we have G flat, the diminished fifth, there's the perfect fifth, G, so G flat is the diminished fifth, and B flat, the minor seventh. The major seventh is of course B, B flat is the minor seventh. Any or all of these notes are commonly found in blues melodies, as well as the melodies of all styles of music that are influenced by blues, including gospel, jazz, rhythm and blues, rockabilly, rock and roll, soul, funk and blues rock. These notes also have an effect on the types of chords that we can play to accompany blues melodies. So in the key of C major, the most commonly used chords are chords 1, 4 and 5. C major, F major and G major. But blues harmony gives us permission to add the minor 7th B flat to the C major chord, making it C dominant 7th or C7. The minor third in the key, E flat, can be added to the F major chord, which is chord 4, making it an F dominant 7th chord or F7. As with traditional diatonic harmony, chord 5 can be extended with a 4th note from the key to make it a dominant 7th chord, in this case G7. So, a blues chord progression in the key of C often contains the chords C7, F7 and G7, all dominant 7th chords. Blues often follows a 12-bar structure, and you've probably heard the expression 12-bar blues. Here's an example. Any of those 3 7th chords can also optionally be played as normal major chords, especially in types of music that are influenced by the blues without actually being blues. There are many possible variations on the 12-bar blues pattern. Next, let's talk about 9th chords, dominant 9ths. Dominant 7th chords, like the ones I've just been playing, are made up of 4 notes. Now that's really useful for the ukulele, which of course has 4 strings. But what about chords made up of 5 notes, for example dominant 9ths? The C 9th chord consists of 5 notes. We have the root note C, the major third E, the perfect 5th G, the minor 7th B flat, and the major 9th D. Now obviously we can't play all of those notes at the same time on a ukulele, so we have to compromise and lose one of the notes. The best notes to leave out of chords like this are the root note and the perfect 5th. So I'm going to show you now 3 dominant 9th chords for a blues in the key of C. First of all, here is C 9th. Now this shape for C 9th contains the notes C, E, B flat and D, so it omits the perfect fifth, G. But it doesn't miss it, it sounds fine. Okay, so here's an F ninth chord, which contains the notes A, E flat, G and C. And even though we call it F ninth, we're not actually playing an F, we've omitted the root note. There's another possible name for that chord, which is A minor 7th flat 5th. Quite often on the ukulele, because we've got this limitation of 4 strings especially, we tend to compromise and miss out certain of the notes of chords. That also sometimes causes a chord shape to have more than one possible name. Now we have a G ninth chord, which again it misses out the root note G. The notes are A, D, F and B. And another possible name for this chord is B minor 7th flat 5th. So these dominant ninth chords can be used wherever you would otherwise use a dominant 7th. For example, in a 12-bar blues. Now let's talk about 6th chords. There are major 6th chords and minor 6th chords. An interval of a major 6th can be added to both major and minor triads. For example, if we take an ordinary C chord, which consists of course of the triad of notes C, E and G. If we add the note A, for example the open A on the first string of the ukulele, that forms a chord called C major 6, often written just as C6. So all I have to do is take my finger off that first string there and strum the 4 strings of the ukulele open. And that is a C6 chord, or C major 6, the easiest chord to play on the ukulele. Now you may have come across that chord before with a different name, especially if you've watched the other 4 videos in this series. You might have seen that that chord is also called A minor 7th. And that's absolutely right. The A minor 7 chord contains the exact same 4 notes as C major 6, just in a different order. Now a minor 6 chord adds the same major 6th interval to a minor triad. If I play this chord here, that is a C minor 6th chord. It contains the root note C, the minor 3rd E flat, the perfect 5th G, and those 3 notes together are a C minor chord. But then if we add the major 6th A, then that chord becomes C minor 6th. Next I'm going to talk about diminished 7th chords. These chords are harmonically unstable because the notes don't all come from any one major scale. They are used to create a moment of harmonic tension, which sets up an expectation of resolution in the ears of the listener. The 4 individual notes in a diminished 7th chord are all a minor 3rd apart, which is 3 semitones or 3 frets on a ukulele. For this reason, the chords can be named after any one of the 4 individual notes. For example, this is C diminished 7th. It contains the root note C, the minor 3rd E flat, the diminished 5th G flat, and the diminished 7th, which is also called the major 6th. A common playing technique on both the ukulele and the guitar is to exploit the characteristics of this chord by moving it up 3 frets, which gives you the exact same chord, just higher sounding. Also, note that depending on context, for example what key you're in, it's perfectly acceptable to call the chord after any one of the 4 notes that make it up. So this C diminished 7th chord here could also be called E flat diminished seventh after the E flat, and of course E flat is also D sharp, so we could call it D sharp diminished seventh. We could call it G flat diminished seventh. G flat is of course also F sharp, and we can call it A diminished seventh. So many names for one chord. Oh, by the way, don't confuse this chord with another chord called C diminished. Some people call this chord C half diminished, and this is a triad. It only contains 3 notes. For example, based on a root note of C, the notes are C, E flat and G flat. So that is actually C diminished, or C half diminished, which is chord 7 in the key of D flat major. In a blues, a diminished 7th chord, built on the augmented 4th note of the key, is often used following chord 4 to add a moment of tension, which is beautifully resolved by a return to chord 1. For example, in the key of C, chord 4 in a blues would be F7. Then we could go to F sharp diminished 7th before resolving it to C or C7. There it is again. And now, augmented 5th chords. Like the diminished 7th, the augmented 5th is another harmonically unstable chord used for creating tension before a resolution. So with the root note of C, you have the major 3rd, which is E, and then instead of the perfect 5th G, you raise it by 1 semitone, which is 1 fret on the ukulele, to make it a G sharp, and that gives us C augmented 5th, which you see written in all sorts of different ways. C plus, C aug 5, C plus 5. In blues and jazz, an augmented 5th chord often follows a dominant 7th to momentarily increase the tension before the tonic chord, chord 1, provides resolution. So for example, G7, G augmented 5th, C major 7. The augmented 5th interval can also be added to a dominant 7th chord. For example, in the chord C7 augmented 5th, instead of just C, E, G and B flat, we raise the G to a G sharp, so now we've got C, E, G sharp and B flat, C7 plus 5. Finally, let's put all of these ideas together. I'm going to play a typical 12-bar blues as played by jazz musicians with a mixture of traditional diatonic harmony, blues harmony, extended chords and substitute chords. So that brings us to the end of this series of ukulele music theory lessons. I hope you found it interesting, and thanks for watching. See you soon.